A star witness disappears just days before testifying in one of the most controversial celebrity trials of the decade. Rumors explode, fingers point, and all eyes turn toward the man at the center of it all, Sean "Diddy" Combs. But this isn't just about a missing witness. It's about the powerful secrets she was ready to expose, and the terrifying possibility that someone didn't want her to speak. It started with silence. One moment, the prosecution's top witness was preparing to take the stand. The next, she was gone, vanished without a trace. No phone calls, no texts, no warning. Not even her own legal team could reach her. Her apartment was untouched. Her phone rang without an answer. The very person prosecutors were counting on to bring their case home simply evaporated from the public eye. At first, the whispers were simple. Maybe she was scared. Maybe the weight of testifying in such a high-profile case had finally gotten to her. After all, going up against a titan like Sean "Diddy" Combs isn't exactly a walk in the park. People figured she had just gone off the grid voluntarily, trying to escape the pressure of the spotlight. It wouldn't have been the first time a witness bailed out of fear, but something about the silence felt different, heavier. It wasn't just nerves, it was off. As hours turned into days, concern morphed into unease. Lawyers began to worry, investigators were left scratching their heads, and in the court of public opinion, suspicion started to grow. That's when Jaguar Wright stepped in. Wright, a singer and no stranger to controversy, didn't just speculate. She went on record with a chilling claim. In her words, this wasn't a random disappearance. This was deliberate, calculated. She stated outright that Diddy, or people connected to him, may have had a hand in silencing the witness. Her tone wasn't uncertain. It was fierce, confident, unapologetic. She didn't say, maybe. She said, he did it. According to Wright, Diddy's reach extends far beyond music and entertainment. And when a woman like Big 3 agreed to testify under her real name, someone somewhere decided that was one step too far. Wright hinted that this was no longer just a legal battle. It was something darker, a war to keep certain truths buried. Suddenly, this wasn't just a missing person. It was the spark that turned a courtroom drama into a nationwide scandal. Jaguar Wright didn't just speculate. She made a bold, pointed accusation that sent shockwaves across social media and the wider entertainment industry. With the kind of calm intensity that comes from someone who's seen too much and kept quiet for too long, she claimed outright that Sean "Diddy" Combs orchestrated the disappearance of the prosecution's star witness. Her exact words? He got to her. Short, director, terrifying. This wasn't the first time Wright had come forward with explosive statements, but this time felt different. The stakes were higher, the timing, unignorable. The prosecution had just lost their most critical witness, a woman known only as Big 3, who had finally agreed to testify under her real name, had vanished just days before trial. No goodbye, no trail, nothing. And here was Jaguar Wright, stepping up to the mic and pointing the finger. She didn't hesitate. According to her, this wasn't cold feet, and it wasn't a coincidence. She alleged that the witness had been forcibly silenced, taken out of the picture, not by chance but by design. Wright claimed there was a machine at work behind the scenes, one that knew exactly what was at risk if this woman spoke. And to back it all up, she claimed to have receipts. But what exactly did she mean by receipts? She wasn't just talking about gossip or hearsay. Wright suggested she had access to information, possibly messages, timelines, insider knowledge that could help connect the dots between the disappearance and those who might have the most to lose. She made it clear that she wouldn't be intimidated or silenced herself. This was bigger than just Diddy's public image. It was about power, influence, and the length someone might go to in order to protect both. Her statements struck a chord because they echoed a fear many already had, that this case wasn't going to be played out fairly, that justice might be buried before it ever got its day in court. Jaguar's voice became a rallying cry, not just for those watching the case, but for those who had suspected for years that the industry protected its own, no matter the cost. Suddenly, this wasn't just a case of someone going off the radar. This was the opening chapter of what looked more and more like a cover-up unfolding in real time, and Jaguar Wright was daring the world to pay attention. In the official court documents, she was only referred to as Big 3. No photo, no age, no background, just a code name, an alias carefully crafted to shield her identity from the public and the press. That level of secrecy isn't common. It's reserved for witnesses whose testimony poses such a serious risk to themselves or others that even their existence must be guarded until the last possible moment. And for months, the name Big Three hung in the background of the trial like a ghost, unseen, unheard, but always looming. Then, just days before she was scheduled to take the stand, everything changed. After weeks of deliberation with federal prosecutors, Big Three made a decision that shocked everyone involved. She agreed to testify under her real name, stepping out from behind the curtain and preparing to share her story publicly. It was a moment that should have been a breakthrough for the case. Instead, it became the moment she vanished. Within hours of confirming her intent to testify openly, Big Three disappeared. There were no signs of a struggle, no note left behind, not a single message sent to her legal team. She didn't pack a bag, didn't withdraw money, didn't give anyone a heads up. It was like she evaporated. And given the sensitive nature of her testimony, it didn't take long for prosecutors to fear the worst. According to legal filings, Big Three wasn't just another witness, she was the witness. Her statements were expected to directly accuse Diddy of years of manipulation, emotional abuse, and coercive control. She was set to outline how he allegedly used his influence to isolate her, to control her movements, and to force her into situations that blurred the line between power and exploitation. Her testimony would have been a linchpin in the case, potentially unlocking a narrative of abuse that went far deeper than the public had seen before. So, when she disappeared, the foundation of the prosecution's argument began to crumble. They admitted it in court filings. Their case, without her, was in jeopardy. With no first-hand account of the alleged abuse, their ability to prove coercion or misconduct weakened dramatically. The evidence, while still present, lacked the emotional weight and first-hand credibility that Big Three was meant to bring. And as the prosecution scrambled to adjust, the defense made their move. Rumors quickly surfaced that Diddy's legal team was planning to request a mistrial or push for a delay, arguing that the absence of a key witness compromised the fairness of the trial. Their timing was sharp, their strategy even sharper. Every hour that passed without Big Three added pressure to the court and sowed more doubt in the minds of jurors and the public alike. The stakes had officially shifted. With one woman missing, the entire trial teetered on the edge of collapse. And while her identity remained unconfirmed to the public, insiders were already speculating. Who was Big Three really? And why did her decision to step forward come at such a high cost? As speculation intensified surrounding the identity of the prosecution's missing star witness, one name kept rising to the surface: Gina Huyn. A familiar face to those who followed Diddy's personal life, Gina wasn't just a former partner. She was someone who had lived in his shadow for years. And now, with the sudden disappearance of Big Three, online sleuths and insiders alike began connecting the dots. The silence, the timing, the emotional history. It all lined up just a little too perfectly. Gina had once been active on social media. Frequent posts, stories, and glimpses into her glamorous but complicated life. But right before the trial began, she went quiet. Radio silent. No posts, no tags, no interaction. For someone who was once part of the celebrity social circuit, the vanishing act stood out. And given the fact that Big Three had only recently agreed to testify under her real name, the overlap in timelines triggered alarm bells. Could Gina be the woman the prosecution was counting on? Her history with Diddy is well documented. In a deeply personal interview, Gina opened up about the dark side of their relationship. She claimed Diddy mistreated her in ways that went far beyond emotional neglect. According to her, he was controlling, manipulative, and emotionally cruel. But it didn't stop there. She spoke of 2 pregnancies. Both allegedly ended not by choice, but by pressure. Gina revealed that when she became pregnant with Diddy's child in October 2014, just months after they began seeing each other, he immediately insisted that she terminate. She claimed he offered her $50,000 to take care of it. But Gina refused. Not because she wanted the money. In fact, she said she turned it down to prove that her feelings were real, that she wasn't just another girl chasing a check. She wanted to keep the child because she genuinely cared for him. She hoped, maybe naively, that love would be enough. That decision set off a spiral. Gina described how, In the months and years that followed, Diddy allegedly became more aggressive, more critical, and emotionally distant. She said he would compare her to other women in his life, particularly Cassie, telling her she wasn't good enough, that she didn't measure up. He allegedly belittled her regularly, making her feel like she was constantly falling short. She spoke of emotional and mental abuse, and even hinted at physical encounters that left lasting scars. Her story, once dismissed by some as tabloid drama, took on a new weight as the federal indictment against Diddy came to light. The patterns she described matched the prosecution's allegations. The timeline aligned with the charges. And now, with Big Three missing, the theory that Gina and the key witness were one and the same gained traction quickly. The question now wasn't just whether Gina had spoken the truth in the past, it was whether she had tried to speak the ultimate truth and been silenced before she could. If she was indeed Big Three, then her disappearance wasn't just tragic, it was catastrophic. And it could mean that someone with everything to lose took drastic steps to make sure her voice would never be heard again. Then came the moment that shifted everything from private whispers to public spectacle, the social media feud. Gina Huyn posted a photo of Diddy kissing her on the cheek, a seemingly innocent image, but one loaded with meaning. In the world of celebrity relationships, every post is calculated, every image a statement. And this one sent shockwaves through Diddy's tightly controlled public narrative. Because at that time, Diddy was also publicly linked to Young Miami, one half of the hip-hop duo City Girls. Young Miami didn't take kindly to the post. In a series of now-viral tweets, she lashed out with venom. She accused Gina of being desperate for attention, of clout chasing and trying to use her name to stay relevant. Her words were sharp, dismissive, and meant to embarrass. But Gina wasn't backing down. She hit back on her Instagram stories with pointed clapbacks, calling Miami insecure and implying that she, not Miami, was the one with Diddy's real loyalty. The back and forth escalated quickly. What started as a passive-aggressive exchange turned into a full-blown digital war. Gina accused Miami of orchestrating drama behind the scenes, claiming she had more influence over Diddy than people realized. She even suggested that Miami played a role in dictating who got access to him, and when. Miami, for her part, doubled down on her insults, mocking Gina's lifestyle, her past, and her place in Diddy's life. But this wasn't just about two women fighting over a man. The insults hinted at something deeper, an ecosystem of control, jealousy, and quiet competition inside Diddy's world. Both women seemed to be jockeying for power, not just affection. And the way they spoke to and about each other gave the public a rare, unfiltered look at what was really going on behind the glamorous parties and curated Instagram photos. One of the most disturbing parts of the exchange was how casually some of the allegations were thrown around. In one post, Miami seemed to allude to Gina performing inappropriate behavior at Diddy's demand, mocking her for being an eater and always available when summoned. Gina shot back, calling Miami a puppet, controlled by the very man they were both fighting over. This wasn't just petty online drama, it became a digital battlefield revealing toxic dynamics in Diddy's inner circle. The feud exposed not just personal resentment, but the emotional scars and complex power plays between the women in his life. It suggested that romantic relationships within that orbit weren't just about love, they were transactional, competitive, and deeply political. And as the public watched the drama unfold, many began to ask an uncomfortable question. If this is what these women are saying in public, what else has been going on in private? What secrets were still buried? Because underneath all the tweets and Instagram stories, there was a sense that these weren't just feuding lovers, they were survivors of something much darker. Behind the celebrity drama and viral tweets lay a much more sinister reality, one that the federal indictment against Sean Diddy Combs laid out in shocking clinical detail. Stripped of gossip and sensationalism, the legal documents revealed a disturbing pattern: years of manipulation, undue pressure, and abuse that, according to prosecutors, were systematic and premeditated. The indictment didn't deal in speculation, it was specific. Names were redacted, but the descriptions were damning. The government alleged that Diddy orchestrated what can only be described as a criminal operation, one that used power, money, and influence to trap women in his orbit and exploit them. According to the feds, he didn't act alone. Associates helped facilitate the abuse. They arranged transportation, maintained schedules, and ensured silence. The term that surfaced repeatedly in the documents was private gatherings, a euphemism used to describe highly choreographed, sexually revealing gatherings that were often filmed without full consent. Women were allegedly brought across state lines, sometimes under the impression they were attending industry events or romantic encounters, only to be pressured into participating in these performances. And afterward, payments were made, rent was covered, career opportunities were dangled, all in an effort to create the illusion of consent. But prosecutors argued that what was really happening was take advantage of disguised as luxury. The women were reportedly controlled, isolated, and made to feel indebted. Their autonomy was systematically stripped away, one favor, one threat at a time. According to the documents, Diddy used his vast wealth and industry clout as both carrot and stick, offering rewards for compliance and punishment for resistance. Even more disturbing was the timeline. This wasn't a brief lapse in judgment or a single incident that spiraled out of control. The indictment outlined a pattern that stretched over a decade, from at least 2009 to 2018. And it didn't stop there. New evidence suggested that after a brief lull, the behavior resumed again in 2021 and continued right up until 2024, when federal agents executed raids and began their formal investigation. This meant that the alleged abuse spanned 2 separate decades and multiple administrations. It wasn't just a dark chapter in Diddy's past. It was, according to the feds, a recurring theme, a lifestyle, and the indictment suggested that behind the music mogul's public image of wealth and success was a tightly controlled system of fear, silence, and exploitation. Suddenly, all the whispers over the years, the rumors, the tabloid headlines, the interviews that had once been dismissed, took on a new light. They weren't isolated outbursts. They were puzzle pieces in a much larger, far more horrifying picture. And with the indictment now public, the world was finally starting to see just how deep it might go. The case against Diddy gained a tidal wave of momentum in 2023 when R&B singer and former longtime partner Cassie Ventura stepped forward with allegations that shocked both the public and industry insiders. Cassie wasn't just a footnote in Diddy's history, she had been a visible, high-profile part of his life for nearly a decade. Their relationship had always seemed enigmatic, but behind the designer clothes and red carpet appearances was a reality far darker than most people imagined. In a detailed and haunting lawsuit, Cassie laid out a disturbing narrative. She described being emotionally controlled and psychologically controlled, often isolated from friends and family. She claimed Diddy used his influence to micromanage her life, from her career to her personal choices, and slowly chipped away at her independence. According to her, he didn't just control her environment, he controlled her mind. What made her account even more chilling was the introduction of what prosecutors later called the business of silence. Cassie claimed that after pressuring her into degrading and unwanted sexual situations, some allegedly involving third parties or being recorded without her full consent, Diddy would pay her afterward. He framed the payments as support or gifts, but to Cassie it was undisclosed payments, a way to erase the moral weight of what had happened and to keep her quiet. The lawsuit described a cycle: undue pressure, compliance, reward. It was a psychological loop, one that blurred the lines between abuse and consent. Cassie said she often felt too dependent, too financially and emotionally entangled to escape. Over time, she began to view silence not just as survival, but as currency. What truly amplified Cassie's claims was how they mirrored the anonymous allegations already circulating around Big Three and the known accounts from Gina Huyen. Each woman described a nearly identical system: promises of fame, then isolation, then manipulation. The patterns were disturbingly consistent, and prosecutors took notice. Federal investigators now believe Cassie's account is not an outlier, but a piece of a much larger framework. According to their statements, there may have been multiple women, possibly even dozens, caught in similar webs of power and fear. Cassie's bravery in coming forward cracked the dam. It offered other survivors the language and visibility to speak, or at the very least, to be seen. Even more unsettling, the feds claim that the pattern of abuse didn't end with Cassie's exit or with the filing of her lawsuit. In fact, they say Diddy continued the same behaviors, coercing, controlling, and covering up, well into 2024. The raids and his eventual arrest weren't just in response to past actions. They were a direct reaction to evidence suggesting that the cycle of abuse was still ongoing. Cassie's decision to speak out may have permanently altered the course of the investigation. Her voice, once buried under years of silence, echoed far beyond the courtroom, and may have opened the door for justice not just for herself, but for every woman who had been told to stay quiet. Now, the case against Sean Diddy Combs has gone far beyond allegations of abuse. It's threatening to dismantle his entire empire. Federal prosecutors are no longer treating this as just a matter of personal misconduct. In their eyes, it's bigger than that. They're framing it as a coordinated, long-running criminal enterprise, and they're coming after everything. According to legal filings, the government is seeking full asset forfeiture. That includes any and all property, investments, and business ventures they believe are tied, directly or indirectly, to the alleged crimes. They're not just talking about cash. They're targeting homes, luxury vehicles, business contracts, stocks, intellectual property rights, and even trademarks associated with bad boy records. The intent is clear: strip the infrastructure that supported the abuse. Bad Boy, once one of the most iconic music labels of the 90s and early 2000s, now finds itself at the center of a federal takedown effort. And that's not just symbolic, it's financial devastation. Every tour, every brand deal, every distribution contract that flowed through Diddy's businesses could be scrutinized. Prosecutors argue that many of these assets may have been acquired, maintained, or leveraged using proceeds tied to undue pressure, take advantage evasion, and threats. If the courts agree, it won't just be a dent in Diddy's wealth. It could be the total collapse of his public and private empire. And for someone whose identity is so tightly interwoven with power, luxury, and control, that loss could be even more devastating than a prison sentence. In response, Diddy's legal team moved quickly. They painted the allegations as exaggerated, recycled narratives from disgruntled former partners. They claimed all relationships mentioned in the lawsuit were consensual and that the accusations were part of a smear campaign fueled by ulterior motives. But the public isn't convinced, especially not after the disappearance of Big Three. The timelines match too well. The stories are too aligned. Each new testimony only reinforces the pattern. And now that the allegations are backed by federal documentation and active investigations, the smear campaign argument is losing traction. The most chilling question now remains: if Gina Huang truly is Big Three, what does that mean for the case? Did Diddy know her identity all along? If so, how far might he have gone to prevent her from testifying? Because if the prosecution's theory is correct, and Diddy used his resources to silence a critical witness, then the consequences could go beyond financial ruin. That kind of action doesn't just end careers, it invites even more serious criminal charges. With federal eyes on every corner of his empire, the walls are closing in. And as the investigation deepens, what once seemed untouchable now looks like it's unraveling brick by brick. Diddy may have built an empire, but now every piece of it is being dragged into the light. One woman, one voice. That's all it might have taken to unravel decades of alleged abuse, manipulation, and secrecy. She wasn't a pop star, she wasn't a household name, but she was the prosecution's key to dismantling one of the most powerful public figures in the entertainment industry. And now, she's gone. No trace, no goodbye, no closure, just a haunting void that grows darker with each passing day. The witness, once known only as Big Three, had finally found the courage to step into the light. After years of silence, years of fear, she was ready to speak, ready to name names, ready to break the cycle. And just as her moment approached, just as her truth was about to echo through a courtroom, she vanished. Jaguar Wright believes that was no coincidence. In her eyes, this wasn't a cold-footed witness walking away. This was sabotage. A premeditated strike to protect a man with everything to lose. A move straight out of a playbook where power buys silence and fear erases truth. The prosecution is scrambling to recover. Without their star witness, their case loses its anchor, its most human, powerful connection to the allegations. The defense, sensing an opportunity, is already moving in, calling for delays, suggesting mistrials, questioning the credibility of a case now marked by mystery. And in the court of public opinion, the uncertainty is driving speculation into overdrive. Was Big Three abducted? Did she go into hiding out of fear? Or was something far more sinister at play? The internet is ablaze with theories, whispers of threats, hints of leverage, even rumors of insider betrayal. And at the center of it all, a name, a legacy, and a question no one can seem to answer. Because if Gina Huang truly was Big Three, and if her disappearance is even partially connected to the testimony she was about to give, then we're not just dealing with a scandal. We're looking at obstruction, tampering, a system willing to erase a woman to preserve a brand. Wright's voice is clear. She says this is bigger than anyone realizes, that the iceberg we've seen is nothing compared to what lies beneath. And she's daring everyone, from fans to investigators, to stop looking away. Because if the rumors are true, if the most damning evidence is still hidden, still buried, then this story isn't anywhere near over. In fact, the most explosive revelations might be the ones we haven't even heard yet. A dangerous silence hangs over the trial. And until Big Three is found, alive, safe, and heard, every headline, every testimony, every court date will be shadowed by the same chilling question. What happens when the truth is stolen before it can be spoken? Stay tuned.